Today marks the 72nd anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, when more than 2,400 American troops were killed in the early morning surprise attack by Japan, pulling the U.S. into World War II. Ceremonies are being held across the nation to remember the day. Former Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North and author of The Hearts of Heroes wrote about the lessons we learned and the events leading up to that attack, and he joins us now. Hi, Colonel North. Good to see you.
Thel, great to be with you. In fact, that second wave of that attack is just beginning right now, 72 years ago at this very minute.
Well, that just painted a picture in my mind, and I can imagine that you have so many pictures in your mind. So I ask, when we approach this day every year, Colonel North, what thoughts and memories tend to make their way back into the forefront of your consciousness?
Well, first of all, not just the 3,591 Americans who were killed and wounded that day, but the reminder from FDR himself that this is a day of infamy, not simply because it was a surprise attack, but because how incredibly unprepared we were for war. The European and Asian leaders, to include China, had warned us that the tripartite agreement among Germany, Italy, and Japan would lead to a global conflagration, and indeed it did. Yet the FDR administration, Franklin Roosevelt, did little to prepare for it. Congress had gutted the military. They had diminished our defenses, and so when the attack came, they didn't even have enough ammunition, much less the ability to put ships at sea after the attack. The end result of that is America loses every single battle up until the Battle of Midway in June of 1942. And unfortunately, it seems like we're repeating that same kind of ignorance, if you will, of the lessons of history.
And if the ignorance, as you put it, Colonel North, on the parts of who in particular?
Well, the building right behind me starts right there, because Congress were the ones that didn't even pass a draft until the day before the attack on Pearl Harbor. The Congress had gutted the American military. They had basically restricted people from going overseas unless they volunteered to do so. Today, thankfully, we have an all-volunteer military, and yet in the building right behind me, they're going along with the Obama administration on gutting the best military force that's ever been assembled in the history of man.
Considering the U.S. and Japan are now allies, if the leaders of the two countries were to reflect upon this day over coffee or, let's say, green tea, what would you hope their current day conversation about Pearl Harbor Day would incorporate?
Well, I don't think the Japanese like to think about Pearl Harbor because, in fact, Fushida himself, the man who led the attack, was a man who recommended against it. And yet the lesson that we all ought to have learned is that our allies are important. We ignored them in the run-up to World War II. And the allies that we now have in the Middle East, for example, Israel and Saudi Arabia, and our allies in Asia, like Japan, are warning us against the cabal that includes Iran and North Korea. And so if you look at what we've just agreed to in Geneva, it's very much akin to what was transpiring in the run-up to World War II. And you now have in Geneva an agreement that the Iranians won't do certain things, but of course, no mention whatsoever of the fact that the North Koreans are helping Iran develop nuclear weapons and the means of delivering them.
Colonel North, I want to remind everybody that your latest book, American Heroes, on the home front, The Hearts of Heroes, available at olivernorth.com. Great stocking stuffers for Christmas. And I do appreciate your time this Saturday afternoon, sir. Colonel Oliver North, thanks so much. Take care.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you.